Before you get to another night, I gotta understand this night.
Yes, ma'am.
You walk in and they're under the covers.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing what? I don't even know.
Snuggling.
The wild that there was at least one other possibility. Did you know the whole time that there was at least one other possibility? No matter how small, you gotta decide that you're gonna support her, encourage her for your children's sake. At least she obviously wants to change, if not for your sake, for the sake of your family as a whole.
Ms. Robinson and her mother are 1,000% certain that the defendant, Mr. Rollins, is her father. But Mr. Rollins is also 1,000% sure he didn't father Ms. Robinson. He says that her mother had a lot of men back in the day, and she just lost track of how many men she slept with. Those are strong accusations, Mr. Rollins. Very strong ones. Let's see how they make Ms. Robinson feel.
So, Ms. Robinson, explain, how has the feeling of denial affected you?
Your Honor, it affected me real bad. Like, I feel like that he wasn't responsible to even say I'm his daughter or not.
And so for 24 years, you've had to deal with this.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Palmer, all her life you have been telling her that Mr. Rollins is her biological father.
Yes, ma'am.
You've never told her any other man was her biological father?
No.
This has been going on for 24 years. Well, the good thing is that for good or bad, we will be seeing the end of this saga today.
And you've never gotten any level of recognition or acknowledgement from him?
No, I haven't.
So, Mr. Rollins, you do not believe you are Ms. Robinson's biological father?
No, ma'am.
You say you're 1,000% sure.
1001.
So, Ms. Robinson, as you grew up, were you told his name?
As I knew him as Doobie.
But you knew his name?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, it's done then. If Mr. Rollins here says he's 1,001% sure, then he's 1,001% sure. There's nothing to do about it. But that's not really how it works, is it? We've got to do the DNA test, and we've got to actually get evidence.
When I was 9, I was on the school bus. My mama and him was on the porch. So when I had got off the school bus, I went upstairs, seen them talking, went and put my book bag down, ran back, talked to my mama, and I asked her, who was that man? She was like, that's your father. So I was like, are you sure that's my father? And she was like, yeah, that's your father. So, Your Honor, I ran down the stairs. He was in the apartment next to ours putting in furniture. I was like, well, it's...
Wow, that's cold. Ms. Robinson says that was how Mr. Rollins behaved at every point in her life, and that's really horrible. If Mr. Rollins had slept with her mom, he should know that there was a chance he could be her father. He should have at least accepted that chance, and maybe told Mr. Robinson that there was a possibility, but he never did that.
That's not right.
Mr. Rollins, I do need to ask you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember this encounter with a 9-year-old little girl?
Yes, ma'am. I do remember that.
Tell me what you remember.
She was just kind of observing me. When I was looking at her, and I said to myself, and I also said to Ms. Palmer that we had no resemblance. Why would you keep engaged?
She have to have resentment of you for to be your child? Ain't nobody resentment of all their parents,
She
right?
had to have the same bloodline.
Nah.
We finna see today, though.
Okay, we will.
Well, Mr. Rollins then tries to quiz Ms. Robinson by asking her how she knows he's her father. He asks if she's a DNA tester, and the young woman doesn't reply at all because that's a nonsensical question, and Judge Lauren agrees.
Hold on, Mr. Rollins. What you not gonna do? What you not gonna do
I'm not
is
gonna
be
prosecute her.
No, what you not? No, you're not gonna prosecute her because you don't have no
Y'all,
law degree.
it seemed like
you're
you're
not a
prosecuting me,
prosecutor. What you
like
are. This is the issue here. Ms. Robinson is in court because she's trying to find her father.
That's why I'm
And
here.
you are in court because you admittedly slept with her mother.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
20 plus years ago.
And she is 20+ years old.
And that's the point here. No one is accusing Mr. Rollins of being the father on zero basis. He slept with Ms. Palmer, and as a result, he could be Ms. Robinson's father. And that's the point of this entire exercise. Anyway, Mr. Rollins here isn't done asking questions. In fact, he has one for Judge Lauren.
But let me ask you this question, Your Honor.
Please do.
After the truth and everything, will the tables turn on her? The
Well,
mother,
no.
that's who I'm talking about.
No. Listen.
You know what? Now, you know, I'm looking like the deadbeat.
You're taking on a level of guilt that nobody is really putting on you. They're telling you their side of the story,
This had nothing
and
to
you're
do with
telling
you.
yours.
You can't-
No, you said persecution. With persecution,
Well, I'm
there's guilt.
prosecuted
Don't bring up
already before I
work.
even came
Hold
to
on,
you.
honey. This is my business.
Exactly. You don't walk into Judge Lauren's court and try to win a verbal contest. That just isn't going to work. Now, why is Mr. Rollins so sure he isn't Ms. Robson's father?
If she really took time out to pursue the other people that were involved with this,
One of the other people involved.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Rollins, who were the other people involved?
I'm not a name dropper,
You don't have to drop the name.
but I have associates.
What kind of associates is these? I want to know.
I want to understand these associates. Who are you talking about? What do you know?
The thing is, I can't prove it right now.
We've gotten this argument so many times here in paternity court. Mr. Rollins is so certain that Ms. Palmer was sleeping with other men while she was with him, but for some reason, he cannot prove that argument whatsoever. He says that he knows these men personally too. Of course, Ms. Palmer vehemently disagrees with this.
Your Honor, I only had one boyfriend, and me and him had broke up when I had a two-night stand with Mr. Rollins over there, and that's the only one. And when it came to his test, he was not the father, so I know he's the father. And I'm 100% of
So
that.
you've already had the other man tested.
Yes, Your
and he
Honor.
was not the father.
Yes, Your Honor.
And so that's why you know Mr. Rollins
Yes, Your
is
Honor.
in your own estimation.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Oh, things are getting real now? Ms. Palmer here has already tested the other one possibility and says Mr. Rollins is the father because he's the second only possibility. That's a really strong argument if Ms. Palmer here is telling the truth, but Mr. Rollins has some other objections, you see. The classic, your feet don't look like mine defense.
When he came there, they was in the kitchen talking, and he gonna say, "Let me see your feet. Your feet do not look like mine." And he said, "Your mama been sleeping with a lot of men." And my daughter said, "No, you don't talk to my mama like that, about my mama like that."
So you told her, let me see your feet?
Yeah.
Why, Mr. Rollins?
Well, I'm not a genetic specialist.
Well, he sounds like a genetic specialist to me. At this point, you kind of feel that Mr. Rollins has got to be the father. His arguments don't add up. He has no evidence of infidelity on Ms. Palmer's part, and Ms. Palmer's evidence actually sounds good. Let's see who's telling the truth. Mr. Rollins here, or Ms. Palmer? It's time for the DNA test results.
Mr. Rollins, you are not the father.
Well,
You are not the father.
it was just my
Everything.
mistake,
Hey.
but I know I didn't sleep with nobody else.
Well, we know that that's a lie. When I read the result and he was not the father, you weren't even surprised in my mind. So that says to me that you knew all the while that there was at least one other possibility.
Mr. Barron and his wife are in court today to solve a 25-year-old paternity question. Mrs. Bradshaw here has been claiming for those 25 years that Mr. Barron is the father of her child and has been forcing him to pay child support for her child. Mr. Barron says after he gets the DNA results here, he will return to court to sue for $21,000 in what he calls fraudulent child support payments. Mrs. Bradshaw says she is sorry for misleading her son all these years, but she is absolutely certain he is Mr. Barron's son.
Your son will join us in a moment, and you are hoping today's DNA results will finally give him his full identity.
Yes.
Now, Mrs. Barron, why do you believe Ms. Bradshaw is lying about your husband being her son's father?
She's a liar. I've been with him for 25 years
No,
and I don't
wasn't.
have
How-
any children to him.
How could you be with him for 25 years when my son is 25? We were
Because-
not with him at the same time.
Ah, so there is the catch. Mr. Barron thinks he cannot be Ian's father because he is sterile, and he knows this because he has been with his wife for 25 years and she has not gotten pregnant even worse. Well, that may be true. Another thing that may be true is that the problem with fertility is with Mrs. Barron, not Mr. Barron.
You never conceived a child with
No,
she
ma'am. and
did,
I
but
sure
not
did.
with
I
him,
sure
with
did. That has
someone
nothing to
else.
do with him.
Yeah, but you cheated on him.
Oh, and you didn't.
You always had to be with the
Hold
guy
on
that
one
I was
second.
with.
Hold on 1 second. Now, Mrs. Barron, I'm trying to understand from you. Why do you believe she's lying? I mean, this has been a long-standing accusation. Your husband's been paying child support. Why?
Because she's a liar. She told him that it was his child.
Oh, okay. So Mrs. Barron has had a child outside wedlock. Suddenly, her claims of Mr. Barron being sterile start making a great deal of sense. And it seems that Mrs. Bradshaw and Mrs. Barron have some unfinished business they would like to get to.
He believed it. He took responsibility for it, and then she blames 3 different men. The father, it can only be
So-
one father.
Ms. Bradshaw, you admitted that you lied. Why did you lie about
I
that?
was ashamed of him.
I'd
for
like to know
one.
why, too.
I was ashamed of
Because you
him and
you
his
put my
family
husband
for
in jail
one.
twice.
No, I didn't.
For this child.
Yes, you did. Yes, you
Saying
did.
he was the father.
That is a lot to unpack. It seems Mr. Barron actually went to jail for child support twice. Mrs. Bradshaw says she only did this because she thought Mr. Barron was going to take a DNA test. At least now we are getting somewhere, and Mrs. Barron and Mrs. Bradshaw will surely not shout at one another again. What? That is exactly what they did. Yikes.
Dad even said that he would pay for the DNA. And that's what I thought he was going to do. He was
Well,
going to
what
request
happened?
DNA.
Well, yeah, because
he signed
you
the
tricked
paper.
him into it and
No,
said, "Oh, I
did
love
not.
you. It's
No, I
my
did not.
son."
No, he wanted to be with me.
Well, I ain't saying not because he's married to me.
I told him it was over.
No, I told you.
Oh, yeah, right. Really?
you stop
All right,
my
all
brother.
right,
Yeah, no, I
ladies and
didn't.
gentlemen,
Yes, you
ladies
did.
and
No, I
gentlemen.
didn't.
So you thought he was going to take the DNA test.
Yes.
You see, Mr. Barron and Mrs. Bradshaw used to have what we call a swell relationship, but then Mrs. Bradshaw started cheating on him, and then he said it was over. And that, ladies and gents, is why Mr. Barron refused to do the DNA test. He refused to prove the child was not his because he believed it wasn't his. That is strange logic, and is exactly the sort of logic that lands you in paternity court.
Found out she slept with my brother.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
She's
you
dating
did.
his cousin
She's dating my cousin.
now.
You're
Keep it
dating
in
his
the
cousin
She's
right
with my
now?
Yes.
cousin right now.
But we'll just keep it in the family, but on the bad
mean-
girl, because I help pay for his child support.
Hopefully
they took out
it is my
Social
son.
And she's saying it's a Southern man's kid. Why didn't he go for SSI? He was dead. She could have got SSI for 18 years, wouldn't have to worry about it.
Wow, this is one tangled up family. Mr. Barron is saying that Mrs. Bradshaw cheated on him with his brother and is now dating his cousin. Is there something in the air Mrs. Bradshaw is breathing? Really? His cousin?
You ever tell your son that anyone else could potentially be his father?
I told him what Mike was.
Yeah, he took her to a dead man's grave and said, this is your son.
Miss Bradshaw, I need to understand this. You took your son to the grave.
Yes,
the
I did.
deceased man that you told him
Yes, I did.
was his father.
And I was wrong. I was totally wrong for doing it because I knew that it wasn't his.
Well, here is the thing. We can understand that. Well, at least I can. But the issue is, why should we believe anything Mrs. Bradshaw says when she lies so blatantly about something so serious to her child? Remember that at this point when she was doing her cemetery runs, Mr. Barron continued to send child support checks and she continued to cash them.
But I didn't want to share my son. I did not want my son around them.
That's
I did. I
life.
seen him twice all his life. This is the lady I
Oh, yeah,
married, and
Christmas
this is
Eve
the
when
lady
you
I
came
want
over
to
to
be
my
with.
house in '96 and seen the son.
Yeah, the only time that
Yeah.
when we split
Big
up,
time.
then you loved him
Straight
again.
up.
All right,
That's
Mr. Barron, so even after all these years that you've paid child support, in your heart, you have doubt. You don't believe you're his father.
Yes, Your Honor.
That is a lot to take in, but here is a simple judgment. If a man is paying child support regularly, then he needs to be able to see his child regularly. For some reason, Mrs. Bradshaw refused to do even that, and now we are here in paternity court to determine who the father of this child is. But first, we have got to hear from Ian himself.
Specifically, taking you to a deceased man's grave and telling you that that was your father.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you feel? How are you?
When I first found out that the guy that's dead wasn't my father, I was just devastated. I was very angry with her, and I just had so many emotions built up. And I kept after her about who my father was because Don was paying child support. I never got to see him.
You can see how hurt Ian was to get the news that the man he thought was his father really was not, and was the other man paying child support. He says he even went to the dead man's parents' house, and they then told him that the man could not be his father because he had gotten close to Mrs. Bradshaw after Ian had been born. That is horrible, and the only way to solve this is to check out the test results.
Mr. Barron, you are not the father. You okay, Mr. Scott?
Just confused again. I don't know where to go from here.
Your son says he doesn't know where to go from here, and you're the only person in this room.
Mr. Clark wants to know whether his 4-year-old daughter, Jelionia, really belongs to him. He says he is unsure because his partner, Ms. Probst, works as an exotic dancer. He says that he knows she has been cheating on him due to the nature of her job, and if Jelionia is proven to be his, he will be seeking sole custody. Ms. Probst, on the other hand, admits that she cheated on Mr. Clark around the time of conception and is unsure who Jelionia's father is. But she insists that that does not mean she is a bad mother.
Complete lie.
You're not living a lie.
Yes, I am. I don't believe she even has a clue or idea who the father name is.
So take me back a little bit. How did this relationship get to this point? You're together and you're happy.
Well, this is how it happened. I was in Job Corps.
Okay.
I was working to get my CNA, nursing license.
Okay.
I met her at a party. She's a very fun, loving girl at that particular time. Took it easy, fell back, I went to school.
And how did she become a totally different person, you may ask? Well, she became a liar. Mr. Clark says she started cheating on him, but Ms. Probst says that does not really matter because she admitted to cheating.
To cheating,
Cheating
which
is
means
lying,
you
and lying is
asked
cheating.
and
It's
I
the same
admitted
thing.
it. That's not
It's the
being
same
a
thing.
liar.
I don't even have to look at you to even say that.
All right, so Miss Probst, let me ask you. Now, you admit that you were in a relationship with Mr. Clark, but then at some point you cheated.
Yes,
And
Your
lied.
Honor. I did not lie.
You
yes,
cheat
Your
and you
Honor.
lie, it's the same thing.
Yes, Your Honor. Basically, how this happened, you know, I went to a party with a friend.
Well, that is not very nice. That same night, this happened around the time of conception as well, so Mr. Clark's complaints are very valid. Ms. Probst brings a calendar to court where she maps out the conception date for her child. During the week of conception, she slept with the other guy once and slept with Mr. Clark 6 times.
Okay, so on
Yellow.
September 1st, indicated in green, you slept with the other guy at the party.
Yes, ma'am.
In yellow are the dates that you slept with Anthony.
Yes, ma'am. They told me my conception
So
date
Jay
was
Leona
around
was
that time.
born in June.
Yes, ma'am.
So as we count back, that first week in September would be the week of conception.
Yes.
During which time you slept with both.
Mr. Clark insists that that was not the only time that Ms. Probst cheated on him. He also claims that she was not always so forthcoming about her tryst with other men. In fact, he says sometimes he had to find out about them himself. If that is true, then Ms. Probst could definitely be hiding more.
You know, we had intercourse one time. She took a shower. I went through, you know, her phone. I found texts to men. I found pictures of herself, texting photos, sending those to other men, and even
That
talking
was
about.
made up. I
No,
sent
it wasn't
the
made
photos,
up.
Your
Your Honor, I
Honor.
even have proof right
I
here,
sent
right
the
now.
photos,
but like I
but
was
I
saying,
did
I
it,
even know that she has texted men of sexual favors for money. Those are things that I know for a fact.
That's not true.
Your Honor, I have
So-
pictures right here. I have evidence.
Now, you would not believe what Ms. Probst's defense is. The photos are shown in court and they are very risque and revealing. But Ms. Probst says she only took those photos and sent them to men because she wanted to see if Mr. Clark was going through her phone. Does she really want the court to believe that?
A couple of months before that,
So you had set him up with these photos?
Yes, ma'am. But
That's a
a
lie.
couple
That's a
months
lie.
before that, I was texting a guy from a club that would come out who was one of my money men, and he had seen some text
One of your
messages.
money men?
Yes, ma'am. One of the guys that come and see me frequently at the club that pay me good money. So he had seen where I had been texting this guy, and he took it upon himself to call this guy back. And
Well, this may sound odd, but maybe you probably should not get into an exclusive relationship with a man if you are in a business where you literally make money off seducing other men. Maybe that is something you should do if you don't want to end up in paternity court. Just a thought.
Now, Miss Probst, is exotic dancing just the
Stripper.
career of your
I'm
choice?
an exotic dancer. No, Your Honor. I had a rough childhood. Me and my family never got along. My father was never around. I just want for my daughter to have the father that I never had. I had to do what I have to do to be able to provide for me and my children. The money is going to be spent the same way.
Wait, now how many children do
not.
you all have together?
2.
Well, one can sympathize with Ms. Probst's childhood while realizing that her work environment will always make her partner doubt her loyalty, and perhaps they should. Anyway, it is time to check the test results and see who is really lying here.
Mr. Clark, when it comes to 4-year-old Jay Leona, you are not her father.
I'm sorry.
Don't come over here.
I'm sorry, but you already knew before we
No, it doesn't.
came. There was a chance
It doesn't
that
matter.
You might not be her
It doesn't
father,
matter.
though.
I'm going to continue, you know, providing for my child. She doesn't have one. Without me, she doesn't have one. I would not allow, some guy from the club or some guy from the street, pick up where I left off, because nobody can do that.
Mrs. Mahan is in 10,000 worlds of hurt. She says her ex-fiance, Mr. Shrum, cheated on her while she was pregnant, broke off her engagement, and now is denying paternity of her 1.5-year-old son, Blake. Mr. Shrum, on the other hand, does his best Shaggy persona by saying it really wasn't him. He claims that Ms. Mahan cheated on him and slept with another man during the conception period of Blake. Therefore, he is fairly certain that he is not Blake's father.
Now, Miss Mahan, why are you convinced that the defendant is the father?
Your Honor, I am extremely upset with this man. I have tried time and time and again to convince him that he is the only man I had unprotected sex with when my son was conceived, but he refuses to believe me. I've been trying for the past
That's not
year.
true.
I've been trying for the past year and a half to convince him that this is his son, but he denied.
Wait a minute, Ms. Mahan. What do you mean by he is the only one you had unprotected intercourse with during that period? Does that mean you slept with other men, but it was protected so it does not matter? Is that what it means? Anyway, Mr. Shrum also has his own shocking story to tell.
It's kind of hard, like I said, I deny the fact because, like I said, one night I woke up and she was next to me. I go out to the living room and she's underneath the covers with her ex.
Okay, let's start from there. You were living together
Yes, ma'am.
and in a relationship.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
You're in the bed one night, wake up, she's not there. And you do what? You go where?
I go out to the living room to see if I can find her, and she's underneath the covers with her ex.
Well, those are a lot of words, Ms. Mahan, and you could really just have said no. So did it happen, or did it not happen? Because I would regard finding my fiancé under the covers with her ex as a good enough reason to call off the wedding. And yes, that would be good enough reason to doubt the paternity of any child she might have at that moment. Anyway, things are even more complicated because the so-called ex was living with them both at the time.
You walk in and they're under the covers.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing what? I don't even know. If
I was nowhere near him. I was on one end of the couch. He was on another. I had my blanket and he had his.
That's not, they weren't even watching TV, they were face to face. I felt like I was betrayed, like I said, would she rather be with him or me? You need to pick which one you need to do.
Now, when you moved in with her and the ex was already living there, did you feel some kind of way about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we have seen loads of weird living arrangements here on Paternity Court, but this seems like it exists in a league of its own completely. Apparently, Ms. Mahan did not want her ex to leave because he had no place to go. So Mr. Shrum joined them in that house, and for some reason is shocked that Ms. Mahan may still be seeing her ex. Is it really that surprising? That someone living with their ex might still be sleeping with them? Is it?
How quickly after you met and got together did you get pregnant?
It was about a month after me and him got together and he moved in with us.
I never knew she was pregnant.
That is a lie. I called you and I told you that I was pregnant the day I found out I was pregnant.
You told me that you were pregnant after we split up, after I called your mom's cell phone, you were at the hospital.
So you were pregnant and you're saying that you told Mr. Shrum from the get-go, I'm pregnant.
Mr. Shrum said this never happened at all. Ms. Mahan recounts this story very vividly, but Mr. Shrum just does not remember. Somebody here is lying, and the story gets even worse.
We had gotten into a big altercation. It was hot one night. He was complaining because it was hot. I told him to quiet down. My mom had to get up the next morning to go to work at 4 o'clock. He started hollering and screaming at me. I slapped him on the arm and told him, you need to quiet down. You're gonna wake up my mother. He turns around and bites me. I scream and my mom comes in the room and tells him he needs to get out or she was gonna call the cops.
Well, if you wouldn't have, like I said,
Did you bite her?
Yeah.
Well, that is not a great enough reason to actually bite someone you are dating, is it? Mr. Shrum says he was just defending himself, and he was within his rights to do exactly that. Anyway, that day, Ms. Mahan's mom had Mr. Shrum removed from the house. The question here is, did Ms. Mahan cheat on Mr. Shrum? Well, we know that there was some cheating, but it may have not been on Ms. Mahan's side.
We made a promise to each other to get married the day after my 18th birthday, and he does not give me any prior notice that he is leaving me for another woman. He had been sleeping with this woman for 2 weeks after we were still together.
Is that true, Mr. Shrum?
I was with another woman, but like I said, we were broke up at the time.
During this time, you're suggesting that she was sleeping with other people during the time of conception.
Yes.
Is this true,
Looks
Ms.
like his
Mahan?
ex.
Did you sleep with anybody?
No.
Ms. Mahan here is sticking with her story. However, she says she had slept with her ex before she and Mr. Shrum got together and did not sleep with him during the conception window. There is only one tested and trusted way to confirm that story, and it is by checking out the DNA test.
It has been determined by this court that you are the father.
Booyah!
Tell me what you feel. It's okay.
Can't believe I wasn't there for him.
You have regret. That's honest. Do you hear him?
Yes, I do.
Because I know he wants to see you. What would you want to say?
I love him, and I'm sorry for denying him.
Is it okay if Mr. Shrum meets his son for the very first time in my chambers?
Yes, Your Honor, he may.